and other things for this some other time. So, Shona, thank you so much for doing this. Actually, I'm going to give an introduction of you and of the episode offline, so we can jump directly to the topic. And my first question is where you are right now, but in the sense of where you're living and where you were born, where you're from, and if you can tell us like something that connects the two things, even if it's the same place, what connects where you were born and where you are living right now?
Okay, so I was born in the north of Ireland, which is the part of Ireland that is still part of the UK. So I was born there in 1968, and I worked there for almost 30 years in the arts and cultural sector. I now work and live in Scotland's capital city, Edinburgh. And I am there because I'm the chief executive of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, which is, I think, the biggest performing arts festival in the world. And it's connected to Ireland and to my growing up experience in that I always wanted to work on arts projects that were about social change or about regeneration of places. And I think the Edinburgh Fringe is probably one of the best examples of a festival that is connected in and rooted to the city that it's based in and creates real change and real opportunities for the artists and creatives in that city. So that's probably the connection.
Great. And when you look at the world, do you think that the world is getting better or it's getting worse? And how, which metrics or which arguments you use to characterize better or worse?
Oh. See, that's a difficult question for me because I am usually an optimist by nature. So I usually come at things from a very positive perspective. And so there are definitely aspects of the world that I think are much better and much more positive. We don't have world wars at the minute, for example. We don't have we have incredible advancements in science and in treatments of illness, and even kind of currently looking at how the world has responded so rapidly to the pandemic and how quickly vaccinations were brought to the fore. So I think there's lots of positive things. But having said that, there are such major concerns, I think, in the world right now that cause me to be less optimistic. And obviously the changes to our environment and the climate crisis is certainly one of those. I'm deeply concerned about that, about what human beings are doing to the planet. I'm deeply concerned about how our growth as a species has taken more and more from the planet on which we all live, and whether we can redress some of the imbalances that has brought about. So that's a big cause of concern. And another cause for concern, I think, is there's something in our political leadership at the moment in different parts of the world, from Brazil to the UK to Russia, to North Korea, that also causes me some deep concern. And I don't think our populations have a big enough grasp of politics and how they can influence change. So we end up with leaders who I don't think are fit for purpose and who have very selfish agendas.
Okay, you kind of answered the next question, but I'm going to try to. I'm going to ask a question out of the script. You're bringing these important questions, but would you say that this perception of getting better or getting worse should be framed. It should be like inside a time frame, right? Because the way I think is that if you look at the world like 50 years ago, the world is better today. And if you look 50 years ago from like 100 years before, 50 years ago was better. And if you go like 500 years ago, and then we can probably and mostly say, looking at whatever markers or metrics, it's getting better. And then if you take a shorter window of time, then you can see this, let's say, the political problems that you listed now. Like we are, you probably can talk about the UK and Brexit. I can talk about the Brazilian crisis and the corruption scandals and everything. And so what I think is that we move forward, but not linearly. So it's a kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then if you take a picture in time and you look at, maybe you're looking at the 1 step back instead of the positive 1 step forward. So, like, do you think that your analysis could have this this effect of a window of time, that the times that we are living, and then they give us this impression of not moving forward?
Except that I think just the size of population and the rate of growth in technology and our need for kind of food, our need for natural resources from the planet on which we live, all of that seems to be happening at a greater speed today than it has ever done in the past. And therefore, I kind of think you do have to look at a slightly shorter window or a shorter time frame. And I suppose the other thing that deeply concerns me about our kind of progress or our success as a species is that it's not equal. There's no equity. So even as we kind of develop and in some ways positively, every boat isn't rising. There is a kind of very small population of unbelievably wealthy, unbelievably rich people who have, hugely luxurious kind of lives and lifestyles. But the difference between them and the poorest people on our planet is absolutely astronomical. So even with kind of positive development, I still think there's massive challenges in terms of equity and access, and whether that's to food, to resources, to education, to learning, to opportunity. I think there's huge inequity in the world right now. And I don't see that lessening. I just see it increasing.
And so like I said, my next question would be, what are the challenges that you see ahead? And you listed some of them. Do you see the professional choice that you made connected with addressing one of these challenges? And how would that be?
I think the professional choice that I've made can address actually several of these challenges, because I think the arts and artists and storytellers and creative people can be. It's probably the arts and the universities, to me, are the two places that are left where conversations can happen, where debate, informed and engaged debate can happen, and where you can look at things from different perspectives. So I see artists and creative people as being really important communicators of the challenges of our time. They tell the stories, and they do it in a way that's creative and can reach large amounts of people. So there's a kind of educational role in that as well. So yes, I see the choice that I've made to support and promote art and creativity as having a big role to play in terms of education, in terms of access, in terms of encouraging curiosity and questioning and proper analytical thought. In the same way as science does on one level, I think the arts do in a different way. So I think I think it's never been more important. And also in terms of the climate and the environment, I think again there's a big role for the arts to play in that, and even my individual organisation as one of the kind of major performing arts festivals in the world, we can lead by example. We can develop models of good practice that have influence and help others approach things in a better way, whether that's reduction of travel, reduction of printed materials, just doing things in a more sustainable way, making sure that people are fairly paid, that we have proper approach to diversity on the stages of our festival. There's I directly relate what I do to the small way in which I can try to make a difference to some of the things that I think are the challenges of our time.
There's one thing that you said that I loved. That is that arts it's one of the places where debate can still happen, and I think that one of the challenges that we are, and maybe I can even relate more to it because of the difficulties that we're having in having conversations in Brazil, about politics and like many topics. So things are so polarized that it's very difficult to have meaningful conversations in between the two sides. And I was wondering.
This is not peculiar to Brazil in any way, Mauro. I mean, you could look
at. I can see it as
the United States, the United Kingdom. You're either for Brexit or you're against Brexit. You're either for a continuation of the United Kingdom, or you're for Scottish independence or for Irish independence. There's you're either on the side of Trump or you're on the side of Biden. You're Republican or you're Democrat. I mean, it's all across the world. I see these kind of big polarizing and polarized debates, and I think it comes right down to the small and the personal now as well. I think the whole kind of noise of social media and Twitter and there's so much noise and so much reactionary exchange that it's kind of it's pushed to the margins. It's pushed to art and education, I think, as the two spaces left to be able to have nuance, the gray areas, the compromise.
Yes, and I was going to do you have an example? Do you have any anecdotal example of story of this of a difficult dialogue being happening that wouldn't happen, I don't know, in social media, happening in arts, or if a dialogue that wouldn't happen even between relatives or friends, because those are the groups that I can see polarization doing more harm, right? Like really families being tear apart and groups of friends and sometimes this I heard this very good comparison is it's the difference between kind of criteria and inflexibility. I don't know exactly how to translate, but rigor and we should be rigorous and have rigor, but we should not be inflexible.
Yes.
And the two things they are similar, but they are not the same. Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about this in science, but I was wondering if that, is that what you mean? Is that something that our arts can bring to us and soften these boundaries, these limits, and allow it's through metaphor, is by reducing noising, is by giving a different perspective. And maybe if you have an example of, you're so involved with this huge festival, you probably do. So like, I'm wondering.
Oh, you've put me on the spot now, Mauro, and I'm trying to think of of a good example. We need to come back.
Okay, so I don't want to make this difficult. Would you say the festival do you see this this debate happening in the festival or through the festival, or these different perspectives being created in the festival?
Yeah, I mean, the festival is an interesting example because I see on the stages of the festival, whether it's comedians or whether it's a theatre piece, or I see really interesting subjects being talked about, debated, covered, being approached through metaphor, as you say, and through a slightly different prism. And I think that's great, because it does really create the space for conversation and debate in a different kind of way. But interestingly, the festival itself has become, I think, this kind of almost football in a polarized debate in Edinburgh at the moment, because there's a cohort or a body of people in Edinburgh who are very conservative in their thinking, and who have decided that there's too much tourism in the city, there's too many people, there's too much kind of commercialism associated with the festivals, and they want everything to go back to what it was like 30 or 40 years ago. And then there's a much bigger cohort who are quieter, but who just love the festivals, really appreciate the festivals, and are completely prepared to accommodate and move around the festivals happening in the city, for 3 weeks every year. So you've got this debate, right? And it's really hard to get a sensible conversation about it, because the ones who are kind of, believe that the city's overpopulated say things like, well, there are 4.5 million additional people who come to Edinburgh for these festivals every year. I mean, the truth is that there are 4.5 million tickets sold, but that does not mean there are 4.5 million additional people. Far from it. But that's where facts get twisted, and in order to suit a preconceived sort of story that people want to tell. And I've found it quite difficult in the last 2 years to find a middle space for a conversation that's sensible, that's based on fact, and that we can come together and actually create an environment that everybody feels happy to progress with. So that's a tangible, real example that I'm living with right at the moment. And it's kind of, it's one of the things I find frustrating, that even in this arts landscape, you can be in this polarized debate.
Yes, it's how much of it do you think is just like taste, a matter of taste? Because when I think about things that people like or that they don't like, I understand that we should try to avoid prejudice or deal with it in a controlled way. But there's also a space for taste, in the sense, I like this, I don't like that, and it's not that I have prejudice against it. I just don't like. Like, I prefer to go to the sea than to go to the mountains, even though like I like to go to the mountains, but I prefer to go to the sea. So there's preference. There's do you think there's a component of this, or we are like all this noise and this polarization took away this space, and now it's like just preconceived ideas, bias, and
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a bit of both. In that, uh, I remember when I was in my early 20s, and my very first job was running a children's film festival in Belfast. And at that time, I couldn't get the Arts Council of Northern Ireland to fund or to support the festival because film wasn't considered to be an art form. I mean, that's inconceivable today that film wouldn't be considered an art form, but that's that's my lived experience, and that's the journey that I've traveled. And so there are those kind of in Edinburgh and in that space now who, yeah, 5 minutes, who also, who and I guess it's partly the media and how the media portray things as well. So still, if you see something on the BBC, for example, that's about the arts, inevitably you will get a picture of a classical musician, an opera singer, or someone who is doing ballet. So when people see that enough, they then kind of determine that that's what the arts are. So there are definitely people, even in the Edinburgh landscape, who don't consider comedy to be an art form, don't consider cabaret to be an art form, don't consider street performance to be serious enough to be considered the arts. So there's definitely an element of conservatism, there's an element of taste, there's an element of being told often enough that this is what art means, so therefore that's what your preconceived notion is. So when you're presented with something else, like the Edinburgh Fringe, which has street performance, cabaret, circus, comedy, theatre, dance, music, it's got it from kind of amateur level to top professionals in their careers. That's challenging for somebody who has a preconceived notion of the arts that's about opera, ballet, and classical music, because that's what they've been told to expect for years.
Okay. We could go on and on. I know you have to go, so I'm going to jump to the 3 rapid fire questions, okay, that are not exactly connected to the topic. So the first one, before I let you go, so the first one is, which book are you reading right now?
Oh, I've literally just finished Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. And actually just saw her read from her new book in London last night. So yeah, it was a brilliant book. I loved it.
Oh, great. And the second is, do you have short or long lunch breaks?
Oh, I don't, generally speaking, don't really have lunch breaks at all. Mauro is usually a sandwich or a bowl of soup at my desk with the laptop. So
it does answer the question.
Yeah.
And the last one is, it's a kind of pool that I'm trying to create a database over it. Bitcoin, are you a believer or a non-believer?
Do you know, I am a confused agnostic is what I am. And even when brilliantly eloquent people like yourself have explained to me what Bitcoin is, I still have no more real understanding of it today than I did 2 years ago, Mauro. So I'm agnostic on that one because I still don't quite understand it.
Wow, okay, great question answer, but you do have to, you do have to understand, because I think it could have a strong impact on your festival, on the way that art is going to be commercialized and valued, and the interaction with the artist is going to happen in the future. We'll go through this. So thank you so much, Shona. Is there somewhere that on the internet that people should go to learn more about you or what you're doing, or like get in touch to try to help?
Yeah, they can go on to www.edfringe.com and you can hear all about the work that we do at the Fringe Society in Edinburgh and all about our future plans. And Mauro, you and I will have to book a date where you can talk me through an idiot's guide to Bitcoin. So let's get that one set up.
It will be my pleasure.
All righty, Mauro. Great to see you. I will have to.
Yes, great to see you too. Thank you so much, Shona.
Take care.
I'm going
Stay
to
in touch. Okay,
going
bye.
to stop the recording now.